My name is Christina Hamilton, the series director. Today we present artist, writer, director, a graceful force indeed, Carrie Mae Weems. Yeah. A big thank you to our partners today for making this event possible, to longtime and dear supporters of the Penny Stamp series, the University of Michigan Museum of Art, and the University Musical Society, our nationally honored jewel in its 140th season. Yeah, that's something to write home about. I just want to point out before we get started that some of you may have seen a video that I posted on Facebook heralding Carrie Mae Weems being here today. I thought it was a particularly poignant piece in that it speaks to our season theme, which is turn. At the beginning of this video, Carrie gives one of the best utterances of the word turn, and in saying that the broad upheaval of the moment is creating a great turn in the possible, which I thought was just the most excellent thing. So thank you for that, Carrie, already. Carrie is here in Ann Arbor in conjunction with her UMS performance, Past Tense, a social justice musical piece, which is being staged at the Power Center tomorrow evening and Saturday evening. So if you do not have your tickets, then get them by visiting ums.org. And for all of you students in the house, remember you get a student price ticket, which is a heck of a deal. Not to be missed, I have one important announcement for you today, and please take note of this. Sir David Adjaye, who is on our upcoming schedule, he has had to reschedule this date with us. We've already rescheduled it, and the complexity of it is that it is earlier than the published calendar scheduled date. So any of your friends that are not here and that you know are coming to Sir David Adjaye, please pass the word. If this is being moved from Monday, the 18th of March, it will now be Monday, the 25th of February, coming right up. That's a Monday evening at 6 p.m. right here at the Michigan. You can join us next Thursday here when we present animator of Spectacle, Clyde Peterson. Nicola's books you will find in the lobby today with two great books by Carrie. Due to Carrie's intense schedule, she is opening the show for you folks tomorrow. We will not be having our regular Q&A, but fear not, for if you do have a ticket to the show, there will be talkbacks post-performance, so you can get your Q&A there. Please remember to turn off your cell phones. And now for some proper words of introduction to our guest today, I have a new addition to our Metro Detroit cultural community to introduce you to. This is the newly minted Chief Executive Officer of the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. He has experience deep across our nation. He has worked for all sorts of organizations, institutions across, beyond, and near and far from arts and culture. So most recently, hailing from Contemporary Art Center in New Orleans. We are thrilled and fortunate to have him. Please welcome Wright Museum's CEO, Neil Barclay.
Good evening, Ann Arbor. Before I start my formal remarks, since it's Valentine's Day, I thought what we should do is that you should turn to the person next to you and you should just give them a big sloppy kiss. Oh, wait, those are different remarks. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That was for a different event that I was doing. All right. Well, you can do it anyway if the person's interesting, you know what I mean? So my name is Neil Barclay, and I have the great pleasure of being the president, the newly minted president. This is my 1 month anniversary at the Charles Wright Museum in Detroit. I send you greetings from our trustees and the incredible men and women that I now have the opportunity to work with every day. But on to Carrie Mae Weems. My first encounter, or one of my first encounters with the work of Carrie Mae Weems came when a trustee of mine, while working in Pittsburgh at the August Wilson Center, called, somewhat alarmed, I have to say, after acquiring one of her works at the recommendation of a prominent New York art dealer. This would have been probably 2 decades ago now. she was surprised to learn that the work was some kind of video, that it was in a box, and that she just didn't know what to do with it. And so she called me over and said, well, this is the piece, right? And of course, we had a great conversation about Carrie and her work. Decades later, the same work would be the centerpiece of a tour that this same trustee would do as part of the Carnegie International, who does a series of tours of collectors in the Pittsburgh area during that international every 4 years. And it's now, of course, installed in a place of pride where everyone who comes in, oh my God, you have a Carrie Mae Weems, I'm so jealous, which is absolutely great. Most recently, I ran into her as we reminded each other backstage at a performance of Kyle Abraham's new work at the Joyce. It was a work accompanied by set by Titus Kafour, himself a rising star in the art world. And as the piece began, the dulcet tones of a woman's voice were reciting the text of the piece that underscored the text that underscored the performance. I'm saying, I know this voice from somewhere. I know that voice. I know that voice. So I'm thinking to myself, and I look around, and two rows behind me is Carrie Mae Weems. And I go, aha, this is who this is. It's a stunning piece. If you do get to see Kyle's work and the piece Meditations, I highly recommend it to you. But Carrie is a world-renowned artist, a winner of both the MacArthur Genius Award and the Rome Prize, and she continues to astound us with the breadth of her aesthetic vision and the issues of social and racial equity that she explores in her critically acclaimed works. Her work, which is often described as exploring the status and the place of African Americans in society, more recently has given way to an even more expansive focus where, as she would describe it, the Black experience is not really the point, but rather the complex, dimensional human experience and how the social inclusion of people in our society is currently being negotiated, I would like to say, I guess. More formally, her experience, she has worked in institutions and organizations across the nation. For over 30 years, she uses image, text, film, and video, has created a complex body of work that centers her on her overarching commitment to helping us better understand our present moment by examining our collective past. As a result of this work, Weems has received numerous awards, grants, and fellowships, including the coveted MacArthur Genius Award, the U.S. State Department's Medal of the Arts, the Joseph H. Hazen Rome Prize Fellowship, a National Endowment for the Arts grant, and Louis Comfort Tiffany Award, among many, many others. Her artwork is included in the public and private collections, nationally and internationally, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Tate Modern in London, the Museum of Modern Art, New York, and the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco. She lives and works in Syracuse, New York. Weems is represented by Jack Shainman Gallery, New York, and past tense, a new performance-based work by her will be presented, as you've just heard, this coming Friday and Saturday at the Power Center. Without further ado, I introduce you to the incredible Carrie Mae Weems.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll see you later.
Hello. Thank you. What an amazing group of people. Hi. Hi. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your time with us. I know that you're all busy, that you have other things to do. This light is really super bright. I wonder if it could come down just a little bit. That would be great. So I can see the audience just a tad. That would be nice. How are you all this evening? Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. I will start with this. I am speaking to all the wonderful students that are in the house. All the wonderful students that are in the house. I want to talk to you directly and to anybody else that feels as though they're lifelong students. I start my day almost every day with other artists. Understanding that I'm influenced by them, that I'm moved by them, that I learn from them, that other artists have done amazing things that ground me, assist me in focusing my energy and understanding what has gone before, what is happening around us, all of us. Typically, I start my day in my studio, where I go almost every morning, particularly when I'm home, and I started with Ode to Life by Don Pullen. And then from Don Pullen, I usually go on to Stevie Wonder's song, great song, Love's in Need of Love Today. For those of you who don't know it, you should. One of the great, great songs that have been made. I often think about these ideas about influence, how we are influenced and how we are made, what is influencing us. And I want you as students, as young people, to pay attention to how you are influenced and what you are influenced by and what you're thinking about and how you're thinking, what is that thinking influenced by and what is it grounded in specifically. Over the course of time, of course, I have noticed that, and in my own life, that I am interested deeply in the arts of appropriation, that I am deeply influenced by other artists, that other artists, by the way in which they've made their work, continues to influence how I make, and almost every other artist that I can think of has also been influenced by other artists. All of us borrowing, all of us appropriating, all of us reflecting the things that are going on around us and sometimes speaking back to that thing. The act and the art of not only influence, but also the acts of appropriation. The role of appropriation in building and modeling new ideas and new concepts that are important. Sometimes we remodel because we've been left out. Sometimes we remodel because it's simply a fine act, a way of acting in the world, a way of copying. The art of appropriation, the engagement of appropriation, artists coming back even to appropriate themselves. The art of appropriation is a really interesting idea in relationship to notions of influence. I have been looking at these works for years and years and years and years and years. And the thing that's really interesting about the visual arts, is the visual arts and the literary arts in particular, is that for the most part, the idea of appropriation, the idea of copying is actually frowned upon, right? The original is thought to be absolutely key to one's development, to one's originality, to one's essence, to one's voice. So that if you're appropriating, sometimes you're stealing, sometimes you're borrowing, sometimes you're expanding, sometimes you're appropriating because you can, right? There are a whole series and set of reasons that one might be involved in the echoing. Sometimes it has to do with getting something that you would not have otherwise, a way of nodding to, bowing before that thing that has come before. Right? Always a sort of dialogue, this dialogue of going back and forth, but in the visual arts, again, for the most part, and in the literary arts, it's often been frowned upon, the idea of plagiarism, right? Idea that, you know, if I make a set of silhouettes, it's assumed that I am borrowing or stealing from Kara Walker, so Kara Walker invented the silhouette. The thing that's very interesting to me is that in music, for the most part, this is where the idea that if you don't know the original, then actually you can't participate in the game at all.
It's knowing that your door is always
Glenn
open
Campbell.
and your path is free to walk.
It's a great song that I absolutely love, and I've listened to for many, many, many years. I was introduced to it by Aretha Franklin, who sang it, and we're going to listen to
And
her
it's knowing
version.
I'm not shackled
Again, the
by
idea that in
forgotten
music,
words and bonds,
if
and
you
the
don't
ink stains
understand
that
the
are dried
original,
upon
then you can
some
never
line.
actually, and you don't know how to play the original. You can't bow to the
That
original.
keeps you in
Then
the
you
back
actually have no
roads by the
reason and no
rivers of
right
my memory.
to appropriate
you
it
ever
and then to make it
gentle on my
your own.
mind.
Bring your own stamp and your own power.
It's
to
not
it.
clinging to
Again, this
the
is
rocks
Gentle on
and
My
ivy
Mind. We'll listen to
planted
just a
on
little
their
bit of it.
columns now that bind me are something that somebody said because they thought we fit together walking. It's just knowing that the world will not be cursing or forgiving when I walk along some railroad track and find that you're moving on the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and for hours you're just gentle on my mind.
Let's fade that out, right? And this sort of really beautiful, clear, poetic sense of longing located in this song, okay? This, Glenn Campbell wrote the song, and then Frank Sinatra did his version. This idea of notions of influence, notions of copying, and then making something, bending it to your will and making it your own.
It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk.
Just like so smooth, so beautiful.
That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your couch.
And this beautiful, clear, open enunciation of sound and voice.
And it's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds, the ink stains that have dried upon some line.
And I can just see myself dancing with my honey.
That keeps you in
And
the
looking
back roads
deeply
by the
into his
rivers
eyes,
of my memory.
crying.
That keeps you ever gentle on my mind.
Let's fade that out. Right? It's just beautiful. When I listen to music, I've learned that I listen to the same things over and over and over and over. There are new things that I listen to occasionally, but there's a playlist. There's a playlist that has anchored my life, and I keep coming back to that playlist over time. I started listening to this music when I was maybe about 15. And then I heard, this is the first thing that I heard by Aretha.
Knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. That makes me know that I can leave my sleeping bag behind your couch.
You have no idea what she's saying,
Yes, it does. Yes, to be right there.
right? It's like she sort of, this voice sort of breaks through. And she's way up here. The lyrics are only there to sort of suggest mood and feeling and idea and heart. But the clarity, it's all gone, it's all blurred, right? Sort of bending around her own need to sort of articulate something else that I think is sort of really amazingly powerful. Listen to this.
It's not clinging to some resin I've been planted on some column now that or something that somebody said because they thought we stick together. We didn't, baby.
Yes. Thank you. Right? Amazing. Amazing. This sort of way in which she sort of, again, each one, loving each one, and knowing each one has taken it to their need, building it to their need, bending it to their need. And so as you sort of think about your own production, your own work, regardless of the field, right? Regardless of the field, it's understanding the field, understanding its complexity, and then trying to understand your own voice and relationship to that thing. And what is it unique about you, unique about your sounding, that you can bring to the field, to the thing, to the work, to your own ideas, to your own concepts, and then push it out. Seeking your own sources of uniqueness and originality, even within the copy. Now, I'm going to play this last thing. This is one of the great things that Aretha started to do, started working on several years ago before she passed away, and that was thinking about what all these other young women primarily had done within the field of pop and R&B. And that she thought that she wanted to leave a kind of treasure and a gift to us and to these singers about what it really means to take something and to bend it to will. This is Aretha doing Rolling in the Deep by Adele, another great song that I love.
Burning in my heart, reaching a fever pitch, and it's bringing me out of the dark. Finally, I can see crystal clear. Go ahead and sell me out, and I'll lay your ship bare. See how I will be with every part of you. Don't underestimate the things that I will do. There's a fire burning in my heart, reaching a fever pitch, and it's bringing me out of the dark. The skies of gold remind me of I can't help it. We almost had it all. The skies you love to keep me
Jazz,
breathless.
spiritual R&B, within this sound, it's pushing it into another space where it almost becomes almost more like a spiritual, as opposed to a love song. And then she starts to appropriate herself within the song that she's appropriating.
Baby, I have no story to be told, but I have one on you, and I'm gonna make your head burn. Whoa! Think of me in the depths of your despair. Make a home down there, 'cause mine sure won't be there. Yeah. The skies of your love remind me of I can't help thinking we almost had it all. The skies of your love to keep me breathless. I can't help thinking we almost had it all. Every open door, found your blessings to find what you look for. Turn my sorrow into treasure gold.
Where does that voice come from?
Back in time and read just what you know.
And again, coming back to her own music, blending her own voice, her own original compositions within the composition, reimagining, reappropriating her own self, coming back to a territory that she's known well, that she's worn over and over and over, as they call it, worrying the line. Our sister, our sister, our queen. That is what she left us with. What an incredible power, an incredible power. Right? You know, I don't know, maybe a voice like Aretha's comes along maybe just once in a lifetime. A Louis Armstrong once in a lifetime, and an Einstein once in a lifetime. Right? I mean, you know, these are enormously gifted people, and where that gift comes from, I have absolutely no idea. But what I do know is that what they've left us, what I think about when I come to this work, is not only the sound, not only the spirit of possibility, and the spirit of ingenuity, but also the spirit of change, and how that is located within the sound itself, and how we then, as practitioners in our various fields, might be able to use some of that in order to sort of move ourselves, to engage ourselves, and to push our own lives, our own possibility into new heights and new territories. Hallelujah. So I do all these different kinds of projects. And just like any other artist, I'm deeply concerned with the kind of work that I make, what I'm doing as an artist, but of course, I'm also deeply concerned, and I always have been since a very little girl, with the social. And so now I even have an organization called Social Studies. Social Studies 101. And I started this organization in particular because I started Social Studies because I wanted to work with artists that were thinking along similar lines. You know, people that were interested in the social, even as we are deeply interested in our own artistic practice, and we participate within the museum system, the gallery system. We're also very committed to, and we have been committed to, working within our own communities. And not because it started trending on social media, or trending with organizations, or trending with other kinds of institutions that realized suddenly, you know, in the last few years that there's actually money in social justice. I never got any of that. I never got any of that money. So I started, you know, the Institute of Sound and Style through my group, Social Studies, to work with kids, thinking about what was going on in my own neighborhood, thinking about black-on-black crime, the impact of black-on-black crime, the impact of poverty on crime. And so we thought that maybe one of the things that we might do, that we would offer our kids training in various forms of practices that we understood, like photography and video, graphic designs, and so forth, and that we would pay them, because all of the kids in my neighborhood in particular needed to be paid. It was sort of a wonderful project. It's an ongoing project, and I'm always interested in any donations that you're willing to make, from $5 to $500. We are more than happy to take. And so this project has been going on for the last 4 years, I think. And of course, you know, I always often think that the work that I'm making is connected to other kinds of work, that they're not singular, and that one of the things that it's important for me to sort of do is to sort of get out of the way of the work, so that the work will tell me what it is and what it needs. Right? And so these ideas that I've been interested in, what happens to black men, what happens to black people, what happens to black bodies, what happens to bodies in general, but more particularly what happens to black bodies, has been a deep concern for a long period of time. And I've worked out those issues in any number of ways, coming back to the work from any number of vantage points over the course of my life. How do I talk about what's going on contemporarily now as I live in this historical moment? How will you address the historical moment in which you live, the issues that you think are absolutely key and important for you to negotiate? I realized at a certain point that I made, for instance, this image as I'm thinking about what's going on contemporarily with African American men. I realized that I made this plate commemorating every black man who lives to see age 21 about 30 years ago. About 30 years ago. So we're sort of involved with sort of the changing same, as it were. right? The changing same, that even as we move forward, as they say, there's one step forward and two steps back, always sort of engaging the sort of tensions of this historical moment. And then I realized recently, and I was talking with Rachel Chanoff, my wonderful friend who's here today, and several other people, that I realized that, in like 2008, when Obama entered office, I heard a great deal about the assassination or the killing of young black men, primarily, if we weren't talking about sort of gang violence, we were also talking about sort of systematic state violence. And I realized that, like in 2017, I realized that I hadn't really heard very much about state violence against men once Trump took office. But I realized that throughout the Obama years that I heard about the killings of black men almost every day, sometimes several times a day. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go back actually and have a look at this. And I'm going to just sort of dot the I's, cross the T's, do a little bit of research, see what's there. And sure enough, we discovered just recently, just through our own research, that the moment Obama took office, there started to be an escalation of killings of young black men. And by 2015, it had actually reached its peak. And at the moment that Trump became president, it began to decline again. Now, why that's true, I'll leave it up to you in the audience to sort of consider and to think about. But that's true has been documented. I did not know that anybody else had done the research, but actually the Washington Post has an extraordinary website on this very thing. And they really track over the course of time this phenomenon. Was this a backlash against the Obama administration? A backlash against Obama as a black man being in the White House? And even though Trump has been sort of extraordinarily divisive, we are still back to at least something that we recognize as being traditional, at least in terms of color in the White House. I have no idea, but I leave it to you to think about and to consider for those of you who are interested in such things. And then I realized, not only am I really interested in my own work, but I'm also interested in lots of other people, and I've done many different kinds of convenings, and I've done them for a long time, for as long as I actually can remember. I started my young life running around the country, collecting interviews and by other artists that I wanted to know what other artists were doing. I wanted to know what other women artists were doing, what other photographers were doing, what black photographers were doing. Right, just trying to understand what Latin American photographers were doing. And I started my life sort of doing that. I started curating exhibitions around those subjects very early on. And then, when I did my show at the Guggenheim, I'm the first African American to be given a solo exhibition at the Guggenheim. Tragic. And so I thought, that I would have like a blowout. And so I invited to a symposium, a kind of five-day convening. Maybe, I don't know, Rachel, what was it like, 180 to 200 artists to join us over the course intensely of 3 days to sort of map out what was going on and what is going on contemporarily within the culture, not only with the visual artists, but with writers and with public intellectuals and dancers and choreographers and people that are engaged in social practice and so forth. So those kinds of projects excite me, they interest me. I'm deeply curious, I'm really nosy. I always want to know what people are up to, what they're thinking and how they're making and how they're molding. And then I just did one actually last year at the Park Avenue Armory, which was a day-long convening, which Rachel Chanoff also helped me with, which was also really special. And the thing that's special for me about them is not just that I'm quote, doing them, but rather the institutional impact that they have. One of the things that we learned, for instance, from the Guggenheim and from the Park Avenue Armory was that those institutions had never used those spaces like that before. They've been there for a really long time, but they've never used their institutions in that kind of way. I think it has something to do with the way in which artists sort of break out of the box. Administrators work in a very particular way that really annoys me. You know? But artists, what artists do, we're always sort of thinking outside of the box. We're sort of thinking about the threads that sort of pull and, the tensions between things, and allowing for that sort of tension to reveal itself and to play with those things, to play with those angles. Anyway, so, but the institutional impact is the thing that I really sort of care about. So we'll go through a little bit more work. These are from the Kitchen Table series, which is probably one of the pieces that I am most known for, and was probably the piece, again, speaking to students, where I think in a real way, in a full way, the sounding and the articulation of my own voice, of my own purpose, my own way of making, that I'd done a lot of copying, that I'd done a lot of looking at any number of artists and thinking about them and reading about them, trying to understand them in relationship then to my own practice. And so something happened with Kitchen Table that was seminal and important. I've also, again, worked with other artists, and other artists have asked me to document them as well. This is Robert Colescott, who represented the United States Venice Biennale in maybe 1993 or 4 or something like this. I don't remember the date, maybe 1997 even. Seduced by one another, yet bound by certain social conventions. You framed me and I framed you, but we were both framed by modernism. And even though we knew better, we continued that time-honored tradition of the artist and his model. His ideas about one being an accomplice in their own victimization has been crucial to my work, and something and a theme that I come back to often. If you get out of the way of the work will tell you what it needs. Working with Robert Colescott, I understood that I was very interested in the history of painting and the relationship of painting to the Black female form. Standing on shaky ground, I was no longer certain of the questions to be asked. It was clear I was not Monet's type, but Picasso, who had a way with women, only used me, and Duchamp never even considered me. Duchamp was my favorite. But it could have been worse. Imagine my fate had de Kooning gotten hold of me. I really like that. And and I also I use humor a lot to sort of break through certain kinds of ideas. From Here I Saw What Happened and I Cried, one of the commissions by the J. Paul Getty Museum. I'm old now. I was one of the first living artists that the J. Paul Getty Museum hired to do a piece. Before, they'd only worked with dead artists. It's a piece of appropriated piece, the entire piece appropriated, and I'll read through it. You became a scientific profile, a Negroid type, an anthropological debate, and a photographic subject. You became mammy, mama, mother, and then confidant. Ha. Descending the throne, you became foot soldier and cook. You became house, yard, field, kitchen. You became Uncle Tom, John, and Clemens Jim. You became drivers, writers, and men of letters. For your names you took hope and humble. Black and tan, your whipped wind of change howled low, blowing itself smack in the middle of Ellington's orchestra. Billy heard it too and cried strange fruit tears. But your resistance was found in the food that you placed on the master's table. Ha! Born with a veil, you became root worker, juju mama, voodoo queen, hoodoo doctor. Some said you were the spitting image of evil. You became playmate to the patriarch and their daughter. You became an accomplice and the music for God Bless the Child. Out of deep rivers, mixed match mulattas, a variety of types sprung up everywhere. You became the joker's joke and anything but what you were. Ha. Some laughed long and hard and loud. And others said, well, the only thing Anika can do for me is to shine my shoes. You became boots and spades and clunes. And restless after the longest winter, you marched and marched and marched. And in your sing-song prayer, you asked, well, didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? So that piece, I mean, there are many things about the piece that interests me. Work that interests me most is work that continues to surprise me, even though I made it. It continues to surprise me. I continue to learn from it. And one of the things that's really, I think, sort of interesting about the work, this particular work, in sort of ways in which are the ways in which you can engage it, so that we can look at African American history specifically. We can look at photographic history. We can look at American history. We can look at blacks within American photography at a certain particular time. I mean, there are any number of ways. It's a very circular piece, and you can enter it from any vantage point. There are a group of writers, actually, that have written about this piece, and I think that it's coming out in a Harvard journal, a book that will be published in the fall. It was a piece that had lots of controversy. Many, many things went on around this piece, really dynamic. I mean, for instance, I was telling somebody this the other day, Harvard at one point was going to sue me for using the first 4 images for a scientific profile. The images belonged to them. And I thought, really, they're going to sue me? That could be interesting. That could be interesting. I was petrified. But then I thought, this is actually a really wonderful discussion to have as a public discourse around these particular images, their particular history, Harvard's particular relationship to race at a particular moment in time, etc. I thought, okay, so sue me. I think we should do it. And then they changed their minds, and then they bought the photographs. It was complicated, very complicated. Really interesting, really interesting. It's the only thing so it's fascinating. And then, but within the work, there are all these tensions that were in the work, and then these tensions get played out in other projects like this, like Lonnie, Lincoln, and Me, which is a Pepper's Ghost that I made several years ago. Beautiful, using sort of early technologies. And so that idea that I'm working with daguerreotypes on the one hand, a certain kind of photography for those of you who are not photographers or interested in the photographic practice as such. But anyway, using these sort of early forms, developing my own daguerreotypes, and then developing Pepper's Ghost, using sort of like the economy of means and early technologies to develop these installations that particularly interest me in relation relationship to the historical drama that's being played out actually within them. And Lincoln, Lonnie, and Me is available online on my website for those of you who are interested in having a look. And then having, sort of like the wonderful opportunity of working with people like Mary J. Blige, who I think is really sort of amazing, and trying to sort of design a piece around her that also reflected back across a certain kind of history that I had been engaged in, and then pushing that out to something that is really sort of wonderful and fanciful and grand and beautiful. We had a ball. We've actually sort of become friends. And then Spike Lee decided at a certain point that he wanted to use Kitchen Table in his project, She's Gotta Have It, that's playing on Netflix. So that when Nola Darling goes to her therapist, my work is really on the wall. And so he decided that he would sort of use me actually in his work. It looks like I have a whole new career ahead. Actually, I don't like being in the movies. I don't have the temperament. Other kinds of things, again, if you pay attention to the work, the work tells you a lot about what you're interested in. At a certain moment, I realized that no matter what I was doing, no matter where I was always really paying attention to the role of architecture and the look of architecture. What was architecture doing? What are buildings doing? How do they invite us in? How do they tell us who we are? What does it say about us? What is the role of material culture and architecture in our lives? And so I started really paying attention to buildings. I went to the west coast of Africa. I started looking at the slave coast and the architecture of slavery. And then, begin to understand something also about the role of gender and the relationship of gender to architecture. That architecture also tells us about who belongs in a space and who doesn't. I was given the Rome Prize at a certain point. When I was 16, I thought, I was going to go to Rome when I was young. I had seen Gidget Goes to Rome. I just sort of imagined myself, with like a really cute Italian boyfriend on the back of a Vespa, just like sleeping my way through Italy. And that didn't happen. It didn't happen, but I think it's probably a good thing I didn't go until I was much older. By then it was over, right? By then it was over, and I was happily married, I must say. But then I also knew what I wanted to do there, that it wasn't just riding on the back of a Vespa, but it was actually really understanding something about the role of architecture in relationship to a city as one of the first great cities in the world. One of the first great cities in the world, in the Western world. One of the first places where, sort of religion comes together, Western religion comes together in an interesting way, the state comes together in a certain way, money comes together in a certain way, power comes together in a certain way. And so I thought that I would spend that year simply documenting my behind all over that city, getting up very, very early in the morning, going out so that I had the command of the streets to myself, for about 3 or 4 hours before most people were getting up and moving around the city. And it was really, really wonderful. It was important, looking at various parts of the city, from, ancient Rome to modern Rome to fascist Rome and Mussolini's Rome and the Jewish Rome and the Jewish Quarter. All of these sort of spaces, really trying to understand the role, the feel of architecture in relationship to the body, and how the body was made to feel in relationship then to the state, to the church, to the to the administration, to the powers that be, and how you had to walk through those spaces, right? Incredibly intimidating, fascinating, and interesting, and we still use models of this everywhere, including at this university, which makes it either appealing or unappealing to people who are really threatened by notions of the power that it attempts to convey. It's really fascinating and important stuff. While I was sort of finishing that project, I began to realize that Rome made a significant, right? My last day in Rome, I made this photograph of a museum, which sent me into a tizzy, because again, I thought, right? The light bulbs went off. Not only now could I sort of think about sort of relationships of power and the state, et cetera, in relationship to architecture, but then I could think also about the role of contemporary museums and historic museums in terms of who they represented, who was inside, who was outside, and possibly why. And so I just, ran around the country like crazy, Europe, for the next month, really, May to June, simply photographing myself, for the most part, standing in front of important museums and contemplating and thinking about what they are, how they operate, and their sort of changing nature, and the necessity of those institutions to begin to speak to their contemporary moment if they hope to be important institutions going forward in our cultural history. Also, of course, as you can see, other kinds of monuments, from the Washington Monument and so forth. Dealing with notions and aspects of color in the work has been important, and I come back to, again, certain themes over and over and over. Themes of assassination, how the country came to be as it was or is, the role of assassination in the formation of the United States, that we contemporarily understand what it meant to have JFK and RFK killed, what it meant to have Malcolm killed, what it meant to have Martin killed, what it meant to have Medgar killed, et cetera, right? I mean, we often think of assassination every place else, but we don't necessarily think about it in relationship to our country, to this great democracy, and yet we know that it has happened, that it's had extraordinary impact on where we are and how we are as a country. And so I play out those themes, and I did that project, Constructing History, with a group of students that I worked with at SCAD a number of years ago, I think maybe in 2005, 2004, something like that. Cloth pieces also, Ritual and Revolution, the Hampton Project, building these sort of environments that, allow you to be both participant and observer. Spending a great deal of time lately on movie sets and looking at movie sets, not because I want to be in the movies, but because I'm particularly interested in critiquing the movies, and I'm interested in critiquing changing patterns within the industry, which all of us are, of course, profoundly aware of, suddenly. This is an image and text piece, and it talks about a woman who arrives on the set just a little too early before these massive shifts have taken place. And so now we have those, we started to see this sort of profound shift with things like Scandal and how to get with Murder, and Empire, and so forth. So I decided that I would go initially to visit all those sets and to mark what was significant and different about them, and to build a series of work around them, and a kind of critical inquiry about what they're doing and how they're doing, and how Hollywood itself is changing in order to accommodate a new level of engagement with its own audience, knowing that these great demographic shifts are really having profound implications in the world. Wonderful project to work on. And then finally, this last project that I'm working on here, past tense, it came out of a larger project called Grace Notes. Very happy to be bringing it here. Hope that some of you will be able to see it tomorrow night and Saturday night. And I guess maybe if I get home and get a chance to work on it, I might get lucky. But it was an important project to do, again, a sort of way of going back to the very first things that we talked about, of sort of ideas and notions about influence, or the role of a Black body in contemporary society, what we do with our empathy, what we do with African Americans, how we think about the African Americans, how do we think about ourselves in relationship to African Americans contemporarily, how do we think about ourselves in relationship to violence and the history of violence that is, I think, sort of being imposed, and it's all through these horrific acts of gun violence, these horrific mass shootings. I'm simply engaged with most of it for any number of reasons. And so what I wanted to end with is a piece by a wonderful, wonderful artist, Black Magic, that I think that if you don't know, again, you should. I love this piece.
You abandoned me. Love don't live here anymore. Just a vacancy. Love don't live here anymore. When you lived inside of me, there was nothing I could conceive that you wouldn't do for me. Trouble seems so far away. You changed that right away, baby. You abandoned me. Love don't live here anymore. Just a vacancy. Love don't live here anymore. Through the windows of my eyes, everyone can see the loneliness inside me. Why'd you have to go away? Don't you know I miss you so and need your love? You've abandoned me. Love don't live here anymore. Just a vacancy. Love don't live here anymore. You've abandoned me. Love don't live here anymore. Just a vacancy, babe. Love don't live here anymore. No, no, no. You've abandoned me. Love don't live here anymore.
Invention. When we talk about invention, we talk about our empathy. Let's place it in the right directions. Thank you so much for this being such a gracious and generous audience. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow! Thank you so much. Thank you. Peace.